Welcome to my diary, beloved. I'm Tatami, and today I want to talk about the home invasion fantasy. Basically, just how I don't understand it. Firstly, I just don't understand the fantasy that people are going to be breaking into your home in particular for your stuff collection, but I also don't understand why people will live under this delusion that when anarchy erupts and the purge is here, that the laws that are being made for right now, while society has not totally collapsed, are still going to be in line. No, dude, you're going to be out there being able to buy a gun and loot with the rest of people, and no one's going to judge you because it's pure anarchy out there and there's no government and nobody's out here to protect you but yourself. So why, while society is upkept and normal, do people argue that we should make laws for this crazy situation where everything crumbles and falls apart? I don't understand it. I didn't understand it as a kid, especially when I was first introduced to the Home Alone movies. I want to say about the first, second grade. I didn't understand it partially, I will say, because I was a kid who had been through abuse. So I was well aware that bad adults, are fully capable of some sick fucking shit. And so I was really disturbed, I would say, for the better part of that movie, just thinking to myself, get out of the house. Fuck the stuff, kid. And then every time he met an actually logical adult to fix the situation and then didn't have them fix the situation, I was just blown away and confused. I came to understand the home invasion a little better when it was time for me, I guess, to pop in the ET VHS. And that was also a home invasion in a sense, with by the government busted in that house. And in fact, I had to rewatch that movie as an adult because I just was so foggy as a kid on the details of how they ran away from the house. They drove away from the house. I remember that. But the whole scene where they're all locked up in that medical thing that they erect inside of the house was just so alien that I just couldn't put those scenes together that was their home. I had to rewatch it. It was just that disturbing and odd to me as a kid in my memory. But I understand the appeal of, like I said, of wanting to protect something like that. And so I was able to better understand why, and then there's other movies, right? There's I wrote it down. Okay, I made a list of a couple that I just remembered. So we had Home Alone, The Purge, Inside, where they were stealing a baby from a pregnant person. Again, that's a situation someone could recognize, but again, if that happened, all bets are off. If somebody's kidnapped you and is trying to steal your baby, all bets are off. Why are we acting oh no, but the law says, and then also, if someone kidnapped you to steal your baby, are we pretending you would have some kind of automatic gun on you at that time? No, you probably wouldn't. You'd wake up there pregnant and terrified with no weapon. Come on. That wouldn't apply in these situations. Then there's When a Stranger Calls. Okay, so I found this quote though that I thought was really interesting. So Paula Morantz Cohen says, "Such films reflect an increased fear of the erosion of distinctions between private and public space." And I thought that was very interesting because that's I think that might be rooted in some of the fears, okay, that are instilled in us, that are very anti-left, that are very anti-socialist, that are very anti-communist, that train us so that we are no, capitalism, yeah, there's a bunch of homeless people, but if you're a communist, there will be people in the food lines who can't eat and they'll be hungry. And you're okay, but wait, there's people who have that in your system as well, but there's no critiquing of capitalism, right? It's only critiques of communism, socialism. I mean, they spend more times critiquing that, socialism and communism, than even fascism, it feels like. It just, we're trained to hate on Russia's past with almost the same level of vigor as Nazi Germany. It's very bizarre the way that we're just trained that, like, these things are bad, this thing is bad. In fact, everything is bad. I mean, even indigenous cultures where nobody was hungry, people were taken care of, etc., etc., well, they're backwards, they're uncivilized, they didn't know what they were doing, blah, blah, blah. And even as time goes on, it's like, oh, actually, they were forest farming and taking care of the forests so that they were more well kept. And then now that we're not, it's kind of becoming an issue with this. Oh, they were actually helping take care of the land in general. They were sustainable. They were all these things. Oh, the medicine that they were using. Well, we put our scientists on it, and it turns out that that plant is actually able to cure X, X, and Y. And just the way they said it was 2,000 years ago, from basic observation. But their science wasn't good enough. Their scientific observations weren't good enough. Ours have proved it. It just doesn't matter, you know, how many people have already said these things or proved these things. It's all demonized because it's not what our government is doing right now. It's not what our government approves of right now. So I found that really interesting when they were talking about the distinctions between private and public space and people fearing more and more public space, when in reality what it is there's so much private space that there's just not enough space for the general public. We have people, businesses who are out here literally buying entire neighborhoods. And then so the logistics of that says that if you grow up in that neighborhood, no one you know owns a home. No one you know will ever own their childhood home. No one you know will ever own their own neighborhood. You can't buy it. It's not for sale. It's a rented neighborhood completely, all owned by one entity, one, you know, and they get to control the rent. They get to decide if it's this, and you have no say over it. You have no control over it. And yet people are out here scared about the private space. But the reality is the natural way, the road that capitalism goes down is that these companies will buy more and more and more spaces to rent to you because they will be the owner, and you will not be able to gain that wealth for your family for the next generation. It's just not going to be a thing. That's just the natural next steps of capitalism. It just grows and grows and eats, and those who have take more. It's a hoarding mentality, and that's really, I think that shows I think that the hoarding mentality is definitely related to this home invasion fantasy, but the hoarding mentality is, I think, part and parcel with the capitalism. It's just something that naturally, again, occurs. People just needing to take, and nobody else can have. And it's not even seen as logical any longer to share that which you do not need, that you're just hoarding of yourself. She finishes the quote with, "These films also reflect a sense that the outside world is more dangerous and unpredictable than ever before," which is statistically not true, but also is perpetuated by our media. It's also perpetuated by the fact that certain communities have a safer, you know, experience than others. But the fact remains is it's not those communities that are significantly oppressed or systemically oppressed that are having these fantasies overall. You know, when the Black community is out here saying arm ourselves, it's typically because it's rooted in a realistic, no, there's really people breaking and entering and blaming us for stuff, and the cops and this and that. There's real rooted, like, civil rights issues and oppressive issues and poverty issues behind it. Typically, it's not the same for the overwhelmingly white supremacist community that has these fantasies, right-wing, conservative, and white supremacists who have these fantasies. That's not really a thing they're experiencing. They're experiencing less than ever. So it's very bizarre to me overall, but I just found it so interesting, like, you know, thinking about this fantasy and just how delusional it is and how much better it could be if, honestly, we didn't have people just hoarding and my stuff, protect my... You know, like, you don't need the stuff, and nobody really wants your stuff collection. Let's just be... A point, I guess, is that I do think that it's important for us to have some kind of common sense gun control, and that whatever our lack of gun control should be, the argument should not be this fantasy, this fantasy in which people really want your stuff collection. I think we need to address the hoarding mentality of our culture and our community, and this pervasive need to protect stuff, even over people's lives. We just pride stuff, and I don't feel that's very civilized. I don't think that's very I think if humanity is to progress, that is one of those things that we will start to lose, because we will recognize that the human life is also important, and that basic ass things aren't as important, especially as typically the things people are trying to, you know, protect with their whole lives. It's not like priceless art or, you know, actually precious artifacts. It's things that one could, you know, easily understand is not more valuable than human life, than the community as a whole, than society. And I think, you know, we just have so much growing to do, unfortunately, as a society to move on beyond the hoarder mentality, beyond this mentality of prioritizing things, prioritizing owning them for yourself, and no one else can have it, and no one else can use or be or feel or experience. And it's disappointing sometimes living here, you know. It's just so disappointing sometimes seeing how many people don't realize how illogical these things are, and then not only how illogical it is, but that you're creating laws that impact the rest of the world based on your illogical beliefs. All right, so that's just my thoughts. That's my roundup. May your ancestors and spirit guides be with you at every crossroads, beloved, and I will see you next time.